Hey everybody, this is Emily again. We're starting my first video about branding. So I'm just brand new to YouTube. This is my first series ever. I figured that I would step through this book that I have on my bookshelf. It's called Designing Brand Identity. And my former experience as a graphic designer has made me curious about YouTube and wanting to explore this channel and this platform in general. And so I thought as a fun side project that I would take on building a YouTube channel for myself. Not necessarily for any specific purpose, but rather just as an exploration, because I've never really worked with YouTube before other than being a content consumer. I've never tried creating content. So this is my first go at it. And normally, and I touched on this in my introduction video, but normally I would do something like this in a vacuum, like by myself, privately, offline, before I ever start doing anything external. So, but then I realized, well, maybe it might be useful for some of you to see how a new channel starts from scratch and builds branding over time. And so as a personal exercise, I was going to step through this book and apply what I learned in here to my channel. I've had this book since college. I went to the University of Minnesota and I studied for a degree in graphic design. I really recommend this book because I actually received an older version of it, and they keep releasing new ones with like new brand studies in it. It's very well done, very well put together. If you look at the negative reviews on this, they say, well, it's too vague or it's too general, and I think that's intentional because of that, I can take this sort of vague general book and apply the principles to a project like this one. So I figured we could just step through this page by page, and you can grow right along with me if you like. So let's see, I've got some notes here that I'm referring, and I'll come back and forth to it. So oh, and then another thing before I move on is I'm sure there's other books about branding, but this one just happened to be on my shelf, and I could, and maybe later I'll introduce other books into this series, but for now I'm just sticking with what I know with this one single book. I don't want to overcomplicate things too much, because that's another little pitfall of mine, is I try to bring in too much information and then I can't move because I'm just paralyzed by too much coming at me at once. So, alright, so for this video, I'm going to separate it into two halves. So this first one is actually just going to be talking about the 2 pages of the book that I wanted to cover. And I have a list of questions here that you can ask yourself if you're going through this exercise as well, that I've extracted from the text in these 2 pages. This page is 2 through 3, by the way. And I'm just going to talk about what their definition of brand is according to this book, and why is it important to have a brand, and then just briefly touch on or talk about brand touch points, like what they are and why that matters for building your brand. And then the last half is going to be more personal. So even though I'm going to be talking like in general terms in the first half, I'm just going to go through the exercise myself in real time so you can see how it would look if you were going to do this yourself. So if you're kind of bored of that, you can just skip all of that, but I thought it would be interesting for you to see the applications being applied in real time. So, alright, this first section, I don't know if I'm going to just say all of these questions, because I think it would be tough for you to follow along with this exercise as I'm saying it, because that would be too fast, because these questions are really deep questions. You could probably spend up to 2 minutes per question. So I'm just going to quickly rattle them off, and I'm going to put the questions on an outline. So I have a website, it's going to be posted in the description, and a link to this outline for this video that accompanies it, and all of the questions will be listed there. So you can just copy paste that into a Word document somewhere and spend some time answering these questions. So all of these questions, let's see, there's about 10 of them. I'm just gonna read them out loud. Who is your competition? How can you connect emotionally with your audience? What makes you irreplaceable? How can you create a lifelong relationship with your audience? How can you stand out in a crowd? What makes people love your content? What helps people trust your content? Who are you? Who needs to know about your content, and why should they care? And how will they find out about you? So those are all the questions, and I'm actually going to go through these questions later in the last half of the video and answer these for myself so you can see what that's like. So let's just talk about the book here. So why have a brand? I'm just going to like quickly show this up on the screen because I don't know if I have some images that I made myself that goes with this, but these are the two books that I wanted, or I'm sorry, the 2 pages that I wanted to go over. So why it's important to have a brand is helping your consumer of your brand navigate from a wide array of choices. So YouTube is a perfect example of like a totally oversaturated market. Even for whatever you're planning on talking about, there's probably tons of YouTubers that are discussing that topic. And so what you need to do is help somebody who is interested in your content navigate that entire landscape of content and find you specifically. And so the example that I thought of when I was looking at this book was specific to YouTube. But if you've ever had the experience of watching a video and then in the side rail it shows other related content, and if there's a YouTuber in there that you already like and you recognize either his face or her face, or there's like certain design elements around the thumbnail that stand out because you recognize the colors of the font or whatever, so it helps you find that person. And of course, like in a broader context, like if you're looking at the grocery store and you're in the soup aisle and there's all these cans of soup, and you know which one is your preferred one. You always go back to that same one. It's Campbell's soup, right? And it stands out on the shelf because of its bold contrast in red and white. And it's really easy to just go straight to that brand. And that also goes to the next point, which is reassurance. Is that you know that every time you pick up a Campbell's soup can, that it's going to be the same product that you've been used to this whole time. In likewise with YouTubing, is once you get used to a certain YouTuber's style of content, then you know that when you click on that link, that you kind of know what to expect when you watch it. And a great example of this for me is I have this one YouTuber that I really like. His name is Dr. Grande, and he's really funny. He's got this great dry humor, but also very knowledgeable and compassionate. And every time I see his thumbnail in the side rail, I'm like, oh, I'm definitely clicking on that because it's probably going to be an interesting story and good insight into the story. So let's see, engagement. How does that navigate it? Okay, engaging. So that kind of ties into the first point about navigation, is using distinctive imagery, language, and associations to help people identify the brand. So navigation is choosing amongst a big array, and then engagement would be identifying that brand as its own thing. So that's why it's important to have a brand. And the next part of this section, or this first half, is like, what is a brand? And I like to think of brand as being like a nesting doll. And if you've played with those toys, you know, there's the big doll, and then it goes, you open it up, and inside there's a smaller one, open that one up, inside there's another one. And so as you get further inside the doll, you're more precise about what exactly it is. And so, like, if you think about yourself as a doll inside the earth, so the outer layers are the virtual space and the globe. And then the next one is your national layer, like what country you live in. And the next one down is local, so it could be like a section of the country or the state or even city. And then the next one from that would be personal, so that would be like your family or your ancestry. And then even deeper than that, like even though your family influences you, you still ultimately have an identity of yourself. So it's basically taking your brand from something that's really broad to very definite. It's its own thing. So I'm just gonna show you a picture that they have in the book, and I still don't know how to like apply images, so I'm gonna show an image at some point maybe. But here is the nesting doll of brand. All right, and then the next one. So we've discussed really quickly about what is brand. It's taking something from big and broad to definite. But within a brand experience, so whatever that definite thing is, it'll have like spokes of a wheel that come out from it. So the brand is what informs all of the spokes of the wheel. And so it's some examples of what that spokes of the wheel would be is something like this, YouTube. Any social network. So whether you're using Twitter or Facebook, if you're making video presentations, you have a certain style or the tenor of your voice, your environment around you, and what kind of experience that you want to give to your consumer. Whenever they tune into a video, it's all going to be a very familiar sights and sounds and you know, storytelling style. And then other spokes of the wheel. So you've got word of mouth, which is, or in the case of the virtual aspect, word of mouth would be organic search. So if you type in something into a search engine and then your content shows up, you want to try to optimize for that search so that your content will show up, that Google will select your video as being relevant and then, you know, offering it as a suggestion. And these are, by the way, these specific touch points that I'm talking about are ones that I'm going to be focusing on first. There's tons of them, and there's too many to focus on all at once unless you're dealing with, you know, a professional design agency that can handle that amount of work. It would take way too much time for me to go through each one of these and make all of these, but I'll just keep going. So email, like, do you have an email signature? How do you speak to your customers in your email? Are you casual? Are you professional? What does your website look like? What kind of services do you offer? Do you write a blog? And do you have an e-newsletter that brings traffic to your site? So those are all points that you can apply branding to it. And that can be like your font, your colors, of course, are big ones, and of course just like the type of speech that you use. And then some of these, the ones that I'm ignoring are mostly print design, because a lot of people don't deal with print design anymore, especially on something like this, like a YouTube channel. Like, I don't own anything printed by any of the people that I follow. It's all totally virtual. So these would be things like business cards, advertisements. I don't really plan on doing any advertising, although I have seen some YouTubers have really funny ads, like they get sponsorships and then they have their own kind of unique take on it, and so that's kind of interesting to see those. Let's see, publications. So like, I'm not going to be doing any print design for like magazines and newspapers or anything like that. Signage. I'm not going to have any employees. I don't have a letterhead. I'm not sending out invoices, at least not yet, you know, maybe someday. But this is all stuff that I'm just considering as, I'm going to push that aside for now. And actually, so I plan on, so in the outline on my website, I'll have a full chart of all of these different brand touch points. So wherever you're starting from, if you're starting from like a more brick and mortar type of place, this stuff could still be relevant for you. You just have to decide which ones you want to do, to spend time on first, whichever one is the most important. So, okay, that is in a nutshell. And here, actually, before I move on, I just wanted to show you this little graphic here. And there's the brand, the definite brand in the center, and then all of these different types of touch points that are around the center of it. And each time a touch point touches the brand, it should you should be able to interface with that one single piece of branded element and know exactly who you're dealing with. A great example, and I'll get into some of these later, but a really great example is a Coca-Cola can. You pick it up and it's got this bold graphic design on it, and you can taste it and experience Coca-Cola. And anytime that you interface with Coca-Cola, they always have a very unified brand experience, no matter what it is. Alright, so this is the second half of the video where I was going to just step through these questions and answer them myself, so you can see what it would be like. So the first one is, who is your competition? I don't really consider other YouTubers to be necessarily competition. I mean, we're all vying for people's attention, but I would consider them to be more like collaborators or co-workers or even mentors. But at the end of the day, we each deep down want you to pick us instead of some other content creator. So those would be my competition, is other YouTubers. Yeah, I'm not necessarily here to beat people. I'm just here to make good content, and hopefully it rises to the top, just on its own merit. And how can I connect emotionally with my audience? So what I think you'll get from me is you'll get transparency. I mean, already you're seeing this is how I am in real life. Like, this is me just having a conversation with you. I'll be transparent with you on what I see and what I think. But I'm also going to be, I'm going to be diplomatic about it. I'm going to give you the right advice. And if you, let's just say you and me were doing a design critique of something, I would challenge the design in an appropriate way so that you can get good feedback from it. Not necessarily to put anybody down or anything like that. That's not the design process. But diplomacy is very important in the process of design. You might get a little quirky humor in there. Like, I'm not a typically humorous person. I'm actually very serious, but you know, every once in a while I have my moments. I'm also very chill. Like, I like to keep things casual and relaxed. So what you're not going to get with me is like drama or charisma or flashiness. You know, I think of Russell Brand. Every time I watch his content, I'm like, gosh, it must be just exhausting to be him. You know, he's so charismatic, and he's so dramatic. I mean, that's who he used to be in his former life. He used to be an actor. So some of that could be trained into him as well. But that's not what you're going to get here. I want to connect with you guys in a way that feels natural, like you're sitting across the table from me, like you're a client of mine. So what makes me irreplaceable? Well, I actually struggled with that one. I think that, I'm just reading my notes here. I think for now, like, just to start with, that you'll keep coming back to me just so that you can get advice on building up your personal brand. And then this kind of content, because it's series-based, will keep you coming back for the next episode. And hopefully it's helpful to you as well. So lifelong, and the next question is, how can you create a lifelong relationship with your audience? And here I'm thinking about the people on YouTube that have made the most impact on my development. Just to name two, I really like Jordan Peterson and I like Scott Adams, and I like to listen to their content because they have really useful and interesting things to say, like new insight, things that I've never thought of before, or a unique way of thinking about a situation. And they can be a little bit dramatic, both of them. They have their own like kind of quirky personalities, but I wouldn't say they're like super flashy either. These two people, I've internalized a lot of their content into my life, which means I think it's important. And so that's what I would like to offer to my audience, is that you come back to me because or I've made an impact on your life because I've helped you in some way. So I guess that's what my relationship to you would be. And how would I stand out in a crowd? Well, I think that among my peers, like the people that I know in person, they think of me as being like having a lot of different interests. And so because I jump around a lot, I know a lot, and I think people think of me as a fun conversation partner. I'm also a creative person. I wouldn't say that I'm original, because so much of creativity is derivative, and so it's hard to stand out that way. And there's a lot of pressure on creative people, but I think as long as you enjoy the process and you enjoy beautiful things, that's really what it's about. So what makes people love my content? I would think that I think I would like to offer a fresh perspective to the topic of design and bring in maybe other cultural touch points that are relevant to the discussion. I'm going to be honest, and I want you to appreciate beauty along with me. So I'll show you beautiful things, and you can enjoy the videos just because it features things that are beautiful. So what helps you trust my content? I'm not here to be like sensational or clickbaity. I hate that. It always makes me feel really distrustful of other YouTubers when I see those tactics being used. So, and I have this quote that I use, that if it makes you feel afraid, rushed, or angry, you should be instantly suspicious of it. But the unfortunate thing is that like clickbait titles do actually work. They probably do make people click on those more and you get more engagement. And I'll try to avoid that as much as possible, but it might just be kind of the nature of the beast of YouTube. And I would like to come at things from as neutral a place as possible. I have my own opinions, but it's actually much more useful to look at things from both perspectives and compare and contrast. And I actually have a hard time, I think, stating my own personal opinion because, well, in my opinion, people don't really care that much about my opinion. So, alright, so this next section, those are all the questions, and this next one is just stepping through this nesting doll that I mentioned. So I'm obviously a human on the planet, and I'm navigating this virtual space as well. But I'm from the United States, and my locality would be the Midwest in Minnesota specifically. So, that will probably inform some of the branding. Like in the winter, it's going to be more cozy, and in the summer, you see these green trees. And I'm hoping to get outside and actually film some things so you can show you around the city a little bit. And my personal background is I grew up in a kind of a small town. I have a Christian ancestry. Well, I was brought up in a Christian faith, although it may come into play much later in these videos, so probably not too much within the branding series, but I might talk about it later. And like my heritage or my ancestry, I've got Irish, Polish, and German, and so you might see some kind of Celtic ideas come into play because I used to really love, I still do, but it was an obsession for a while. I was obsessed with Ireland and all things Ireland, And so I really appreciate things like the Celtic knotwork and the design, or the Book of Kells. I mean, it's just beautiful artwork. So I'm really amazed by that. Let's see. And then my personal identity, like how all of those touch points that I just mentioned, like make me me. And so I'm still, I think I have a pretty good idea of who I am internally, but I've never really verbalized it, you know, or written it down, like this is my identity. And so this is kind of an interesting exercise for me to step through and play around with that idea. And who needs to know about my content? I mean, I'm a pretty average person. I consider myself to be intellectual, but I'm just of average intelligence. I don't know who needs to know about my content. I suppose YouTubers that want to start a channel. I sort of touched on that already. That might already be answering a question that you know. And then how will people find out about me? And right now my focus is going to be all organic. I don't have a huge budget for production or advertising, and I don't have any skills in videography, so a lot of these things are just going to be done in a single take and hope for the best. So it's going to be a work in progress. Maybe we'll get into some of those fancy things later. So alright, so this is the last section, and before I sign off, I'd like to leave everybody with a key takeaway. And I think my key takeaway in doing, like, just stepping through this exercise is to just connect with people in a natural way. Like, don't be afraid to just show yourself as you are. You don't have to put on a persona for people. And just be yourself. So, and that's my promise to you, is I'm just going to be myself. So, yeah, I'm working through this book page by page, and then as I go, I'm going to be internalizing some of the content that I'm thinking about into the channel itself. And the next section is going to be about designing brand identity, and I set up a little exploration for myself to look at various YouTube channels across lots of different topics and just to explore what are they doing and how does that work for me, or it doesn't work, and that kind of thing. So that'll be the next video. So thank you so much, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.